Order, the honourable member for Parkes. Order. Before calling the Leader of the National Party... Order. The original question was that the motion of censure moved by the Leader of the Opposition be agreed to. To this motion, the Honourable the Prime Minister has moved this amendment that all words after that be omitted with a view to substituting other words. The question now is that the amendment be agreed to. The Leader of the National Party.
Mr Speaker, the arrogance of the Prime Minister committed him to an awful mistake yesterday, a mistake which in the terms of partisan politics might give us some passing joy, but in terms of nation building and rebuilding the unity of this nation can give no one any joy about the governance of Australia. He failed, he provided a double standard, he in fact debased the standard of the office of Prime Minister. And in saying all of that, not only has the Leader of the Opposition totally exposed the Prime Minister today, not only has the Leader of the Opposition totally shown what a complete and arrogant and double-standard Prime Minister he is, we now find this is not the first occasion the Prime Minister has sought to bring racism of the worst kind into national political debate. So it is, Mr Acting Speaker, that I find myself duty-bound to give a quote back to the Prime Minister in response to the press release of mine he was kind enough to read out, of one which will cause him some heartburn, as well it might. And I refer to January 1992, the 22nd of January 1992, when the Prime Minister was doing that favourite radio program of his, John Law's, 2UE, Sydney, and this is what he said, and I quote exactly, Mr Acting Speaker, the words of Prime Minister Keating at that time. And I'd ask people to listen, in fairness to the Prime Minister, in fairness to the Prime Minister. The quote, "I think from the opposition we will see a repeat of what we saw in 1988, which was basically about how we shouldn't have more Asians here. We shouldn't have Asians in this country. I mean, if you scratch most of these characters, what you get is a little bit of that sort of talk." What shame! What absolute disgrace!
Order. Order. The Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition.
So it is not once, but twice. It is not once, but twice, as Prime Minister, that you have made major interventions bringing racism onto the national agenda in a disgraceful way. And I might add, in terms of Asia, the truth has come out in recent weeks. I haven't spent much time reading this book, but I have spent a little bit of time of reading it, and I find on top of page 434, no, I can't table it, I've checked on standing orders, I would like to do so.
Page by page every day.
But I'd like to table page 434 if the Leader of the House would let me. It says, and I quote, "Paul Keating, my successor as Prime Minister, was a late convert to the significance of Asia." In fact, Mr Hawker said very clearly that whilst he was Prime Minister, he had to drag screaming the then Treasurer to go to Tokyo, Japan and get off the European jumbos and do a fair dinkum visit to Japan, divert from the French clocks visits, divert from the grand tour of Russia, glorious Russia, you'll recall, when he vanished for several weeks visiting Mother Russia, and in fact he had to be directed. He had to be directed to go to Asia. So let's have no nonsense from this man as to who's fair dinkum about Asia.
Jerry Hand walked away from him.
The Leader of the Opposition has been to many Asian countries, Malaysia, so many others, I can't name them all. I have made working visits to some 19 Asian countries. This man only got around to going to Asia with any degree of application when he became Prime Minister. And this man, in fact, in his work as Prime Minister, has not once but twice injected racism into the national forum and national agenda in a disgraceful way. So you have been caught out. You've been caught out as one of the most arrogant Prime Ministers ever to come to the dispatch box. You've been caught out at bringing racism into the political agenda of this nation when it is the last thing that you should do. And you've been caught out with your substandard attitude to building a proper relationship in the early days of your political career with Asia, and that's been exposed by the Prime Minister time and time again. And, Mr Speaker, in these circumstances, there is no doubt in my mind that you should pay the price, and you should allow your members to vote the way that they would want to vote on this resolution if given half a chance. You know that you got it wrong yesterday. We know that you got it wrong yesterday, and even at this 11th hour, we invite the Prime Minister to be man enough to stand up at the dispatch box and apologise. And apologise to the Leader of the Opposition, and apologise for his abuse of his high political office, and regret fully the comments that he made not only yesterday but in January 1992. He did indeed make them. And, Mr Speaker, I have to say that some of the government might treat this as a laughing matter, but others out there believe that, in fact, what the Prime Minister has done has made a truly awful mistake, and one which will do damage to the fabric of politics and to the community relations right across Australia. And it is for this reason, Mr Acting Speaker, that the Prime Minister deserves the total condemnation of this House, his failure to fully disassociate with Ian Taylor, his failure to carry high standards into the office of Prime Ministership, and it is for that reason that this motion should be carried by this House.
Well, the question is that the amendment be agreed to. The Leader of the House.
What the Prime Minister said in answer to question, in his question time answer on the subject of Ian Taylor, was to totally disassociate himself from it. Totally. So I don't quite know what the point.